But the closest you're going to get to stopping it at the source, to stopping, for example, the destruction of the American legal system, to stopping the destruction of our health system and the basic services that keep people alive and that keep the country functioning, the hardest leverage that can be applied against him at the source is what hypothetically would come from Republicans. And I know, cynically, you may never expect to get that. But strategically, you cannot stop trying to get it because of its crucial importance. And I'm just going to give you one example here, just one case study. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. I always think of him as having kind of an unforgettable name, but a very memorable haircut. Always looked to me like an otherwise healthy person who has just been gently electrocuted. But Senator Bill Cassidy is a senator. He's also a physician. He's a gastroenterologist. He got into the Senate in a campaign in 2014 that largely focused on his role as a doctor. He was best known, including in that campaign, not just for being a good doctor for his individual patients, but for having championed in his home state of Louisiana, having championed a new free vaccination program for Louisiana school kids, specifically hepatitis B vaccination. And he frequently told this important, heartbreaking story about what he called his worst day as a doctor. Senator Bill Cassidy, as a doctor, had an 18-year-old patient who had contracted hepatitis B. And as an 18-year-old, her health crashed. He had to scramble to have her airlifted to Shreveport, Louisiana, to get an emergency liver transplant. He said in one interview with the Washington Post, quote, "I was sitting there thinking, if we had vaccinated this girl with a $50 vaccine, we could have saved a $250,000 operation and a lifetime of $50,000 a year medical bills." And that was just one interview that he did about this case, but he's given a ton of interviews about this case. He talks about it all the time. He talked about it for years. He still talks about it. He relayed that story again in his opening statement in the confirmation hearings that he oversaw for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. But that program and that revelation about the importance of that kind of public health effort, it's arguably the whole reason he is a senator at all. Hep B vaccination for kids is his origin story as a public servant. It is the one thing he most wants to be known for, and probably the thing he most is known for, at least so far. Because now he's the chair of the Health Committee in the second Trump term. And as the senator who chairs the Health Committee, he did just oversee the confirmation of Bobby Kennedy Jr. to be the nation's health secretary. And here's him on Hep B vaccination and what a stupid idea it is.
The vaccine schedule immediately after they passed the Vaccine Act exploded because all these companies were rushing to get new vaccines onto the schedule. Many of them for diseases that weren't even casually contagious, like ridiculous diseases that are in that, like hepatitis B. Why would you give that? You get hepatitis B from, from sharing needles or from like going to a really seasoned prostitute or from sort of compulsive homosexual behavior.
Compulsive homosexual behavior or going to a really well-seasoned prostitute. That's the only way you get hepatitis B. He intones on Joe Rogan's podcast, which is not at all true. And that's okay. You can believe stuff that's not true. You can say anything you want on a podcast and knock yourself out. But in a working political system, you probably don't then get confirmed as health secretary in the United States government. If the chairman of the Health Committee in the Senate that has to confirm you actually does know what he's talking about on this issue because he's a gastroenterologist who's devoted his life as a public servant to the cause of Hep B vaccination saving young people's lives. Senator Bill Cassidy, nevertheless, ate up that pile and cast his vote for Bobby Kennedy to be health secretary in the United States. He said that he'd had conversations with Kennedy that assured him that Kennedy wasn't essentially as crazy on this issue of vaccines as he seemed. He also, though, in the confirmation process, got an explicit assurance from Kennedy that if he were confirmed as health secretary, he wouldn't try to change the vaccine schedule for American kids. Well, now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been sworn in as health secretary, and in his first full day on the job, wouldn't you know it, he confirmed that he definitely is going to look into that vaccine schedule, saying, quote, nothing's going to be off limits. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana hasn't been brave yet. He does not feel inspired by calls to man the barricades, to stand up for democracy. Honestly, he just does not appear to be inspired along these lines, like some other Americans may be. But he does chair the Health Committee in the United States Senate. And he did just vote to confirm someone who says that his physician's knowledge about vaccines is ridiculous. Because, what, Kennedy's sure that Bill Cassidy's 18-year-old patient must have gotten the hepatitis B from compulsive homosexual behavior or contact with a really well-seasoned prostitute? Senator Bill Cassidy really did just vote to confirm someone who appears to have lied right to his face under oath in the confirmation process on saying he wouldn't revisit the kids' vaccine schedule, something that Bill Cassidy has effectively worked on his whole life. So will Bill Cassidy get brave on this? Can't afford to give up on that prospect as a country. After Senator Cassidy oversaw the confirmation of Bobby Kennedy for that job of health secretary, just to add insult and further injury to injury, Senator Bill Cassidy's own home state of Louisiana announced that they will no longer promote vaccines for Louisiana school kids. On the strength, presumably, of the endorsement for vaccine quackery that the confirmation of Bobby Kennedy implied, they will no longer promote vaccines for kids in Louisiana. Senator Bill Cassidy, that is your home state. Look what you have wrought. Look what you are doing to your own life's work. And I say that, Senator Cassidy, because you have a ton of power here. You are the chairman of the Health Committee in the Senate. You can call Robert F. Kennedy Jr. into the Senate and hold hearings and demand information and demand testimony. And in so doing, you have more power than anybody in this country to turn this thing around. And it is something on which you are an expert and on which you are emotionally committed and to which you have devoted your life. You think he'll do it?